So on this polar one, I thought part A was kind of normal with the polar area forming. Part B was a little bit weird just with the dividing it up. C and D was a little bit tricky, but I think once you see it done, it'll hopefully make sense and then we'll practice it. Make sure you practice that in the calculator and let me know if you have any trouble getting those numbers. But part A just says find the area of R. So on the polar area, it's that 1/2 times the integral of R squared formula. And it tells you you're going in between 0 and pi over 2 right there. So just go 1/2 between 0 and pi over 2 and the integral. And then the R1 is the f of theta. That's your 1 plus sine cosine 2 theta squared. So then you just math 9 that thing, make sure you can get that number. Now for part B, it says we got this rate, theta equals k. So basically I just kind of drew that in there, and then it says it divides the S into two different regions. And then we just want to set up an integral. We don't have to solve it. We just want to set up an integral that gives us that solution right there. Now, when you're doing the S, if you think about it, if I just want the area of S, I need to do this larger radius, this R2, subtract out this smaller radius of R1. That'll give me all of the stuff in between. So that's going to be the G function minus the F function. We're going to use that quite a bit through the rest of this problem as well. But the G minus the F, so the G would give me the radius of the whole thing, and then the F would give me the radius up to that point right there. So if I subtract them, that's the radius that I want. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do 1/2. And so there's a couple ways that you could do this, but one way I'm going to do is I'm going to do that G minus F. That's going to be like my R thing, and I'm going to need to square that. So I can go from 0 to k, and that should equal the integral from k to that pi over 2. And so that's what I did. I set up two integrals right here. I did my 1/2 times this R squared, and that's going to be like the G squared minus the F squared, the G squared minus the F squared. And then I'm going to go from 0 to k, and then from k to pi over 2. And I can just simply set those two things equal to each other. You could also take either one of those and set that equal to that thing divided by 2 like that. So I mean that, you don't have to actually work that out or get a number for that or anything like that. But there's a couple ways that you kind of approach that. All right, now let's just say you had a little bit of issues with letter B. You could still get letter C and letter D. It's just kind of like some separate things there. Now, letter C is talking about the distance between the 2 points, okay? So again, that means you're just gonna subtract them like we already talked about. So that's your G of theta minus the F of theta. And then when you see that phrase average value, so first it says write an expression for that W of theta. So that's just subtracting the two things, G minus the F. And then when you see the average value, that's your formula, your 1 over B minus A times the integral from A to B. That's also in your blue packet there, just your average value formula. It says 1 over the power 2 and 1 over a fraction is the reciprocal of that fraction. And then you're going to math 9 that thing. So you actually got to take like that function, plug it in for the G of theta, go minus that function, plug in for the F of theta, and then just math 9 that, and that's going to be your average value. And then letter D wants to know when is this W of theta equivalent to that average value. So I took the G minus F, and I got to set it equal to that 0.485 number there. So here's what you're going to do is just move that over. It's a difficult equation to solve, but you're going to enter into the calculator G minus the F. So this function minus this function minus that 0.485. You could graph that in between, the 0 and pi over 2 where this whole problem is existing, and you can let that calculator find that 0 for you. If you forgot how to do that, make sure you just rewatch that graphing calculator video. We've shown that on a few of these videos right there. So I'm hoping you can get that number correctly by yourself this time, and then let me know if you can't have any trouble getting that. And then the last part of that says, is that function, that W of theta, that G minus the F, is that function increasing or decreasing? And we know anytime you do an increasing decreasing question, you got to figure out the derivative, okay? So you can use the math 8 function, all right? So just go G minus the F and then do the derivative of that. So I would go G minus the F, do the math 8 with that thing at the 0.518, and it's going to give you that number. So use the math 8 feature in the calculator, and then since that derivative is negative, that means that function is going to be decreasing. Smoke detectors in your house, make sure they work, test them out, check those batteries, make sure you stay safe there.